Good morning, and thank you for joining us. As Mother's Day approaches here in the United States, and many of us celebrate our mothers or mother figures in our lives, we want to bring you a story about one woman's resilience and enduring hope. After 3 miscarriages, Priska Löwenbein was so hopeful to discover that she was once again pregnant in the summer of 1944. But within weeks, Priska was forced onto a crowded railcar bound for Auschwitz, a place without hope, fearful that she would lose yet another baby. Miraculously, Priska's baby daughter, Hana, survived the Holocaust, and this photograph of the two of them is from not long after the war. We are so glad to have with us today that baby girl all grown up. Welcome to Hana Berger Moran. Hi, Hana.
Hello, Edna, and thank you so very much. I am
It's a
honored to
pleasure.
be here.
It's a pleasure and honor to have you here. Thank you. I'm also very pleased to be joined by my colleague, museum historian Lindsay MacNeill, who will help us to understand the deadly risks for Jewish women like Priska who were pregnant or mothers of young children during the Holocaust. Welcome back, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me back, Edna and Hana. I'm so excited and honored to be here with you today.
And
Thank
viewers,
you.
please share your questions for Hana and Lindsay in the comments section, and we'll get to as many of them in the course of the live show as possible. So Hana, I'd like to start before there was a you, to start with your parents and their love story. By the time your parents met, World War II had already begun, and Slovakia, where they lived, was under the control of a government allied with Nazi Germany. What can you tell us about your parents and how they fell in love in this environment of turmoil?
In 1941, my mother was living in Bratislava and teaching at the local school. And one day, she was sitting in a cafe where there was a little party, and a young man, tall young man with a mustache and a drink in his hand, approached her table and said to her, "Hello, you are so pretty. I would so like to go out with you." To which Mom looked at him, looked at the drink in his hand, and said, "I will not go out with you. I don't go out with people who drink." Well, that changed because 6 months later, they married, and my father never touched drink again.
And you've told me that your father wrote beautiful letters to your mother every day during those 6 months of courtship, right?
Yes, and I have those letters. They were incredible.
It's very
My
romantic.
were very short always, but my father's were several pages long. They were wonderful. He was a journalist, so of course he knew how to write well and long.
So your father was a journalist, your mother was passionate about languages, she was a teacher. Could you give us a sense how the laws that were discriminating against Jews in Slovakia affected their professions and also their lives more broadly, that of your grandparents?
My my father lost his job as a journalist and luckily got employed in a bank. The director of the bank was a Greek immigrant. My mother also lost her job in Bratislava and had to travel to a village nearby to teach primary school. My grandparents lost their little cafe in a small town in central Slovakia called Zlaté Moravce, where they had a cafe, as I said, and they lost it and they moved to Bratislava as well. When they moved, it was 1942. Yeah.
And all of these losses, all of these exclusions were simply because they were Jewish. It's not that they weren't good at their jobs or, were running an unsuccessful business, but it was discriminatory. But nevertheless, as you've described to us, your parents were young, they were in love, they were newlyweds, and they wanted to immediately start a family. But that did not proceed as smoothly as they would have hoped. Tell us a little bit about the difficulties that your mother encountered with pregnancy.
Unfortunately, as I said, my mother was at that time already 25, and she felt that she should have a child as soon as possible. She tried. There were 3 pregnancies, which unfortunately ended in miscarriage. But as I knew my mom, when she put her mind to something, it was going to be done. And as she got pregnant again in summer of 1944, she was looking very much forward to that. But the times for them were really very difficult. When they went out of the house for a short walk, where they were allowed to walk, they had to wear the yellow star, the Star of David. They lived with another couple in the apartment. They couldn't be just by themselves. So it got a little bit tight there too. It was difficult. But mom was looking forward to have a baby.
Around her, though, and these hopes, the circumstances were becoming increasingly dire and deadly for Jews. In fact, the Slovak government was the first Nazi ally that not only consented, but somewhat enthusiastically began to deport its Jewish population and turn those innocent people over to the Germans. And in the summer of 44, when your mother was newly pregnant with you, they too were rounded up. Tibor Löwenbein, your father, and your mother, Priska, they were forced into a rail car. And I want us to be careful that we are not projecting back knowledge that they could not have had then. They did not know that this train was headed to Auschwitz, a killing center and concentration camp. You have described to me, Hana, that while trapped in this dark and crowded rail car without food, without water, without a bathroom, your mother was also suffering from terrible morning sickness, and your father was trying to comfort her and protect her. What did she later tell you about their discussions, their conversations during this really arduous, miserable journey?
In spite of everything that she was feeling physically, my mother's soul was just so happy about hopefully having a child that all she could talk about when she could talk was what will she name the baby. And if it was a boy, she had a name, and if it was a girl, she had a name. For boy, it was Michael, and for the girl, it was Hannah. And every time she was saying all these wonderful things, my father said, Piri, I am really worried. I'm very, very, very worried. And nearby on the ground of that wagon was sitting a woman who kind of shuffled closer to them. And she said to my father, Tibor, I will take care of Piri. She will be okay. She will come back with a baby. And I will finally get married because it will be a mitzvah. Mitzvah being a good deed, that she will take care of my mom. Her name was Edith, and she did.
And this was a total stranger. She wasn't someone who your parents had known.
No, she was a total
she overheard.
stranger. Right.
And in fact, your middle name is Edith in honor of this woman. We will hear more about her soon. What did your father say to your mother to give her some resilience, some feeling for optimism?
He told her, think only good thoughts. Think only good thoughts, Piri. And that's what she did. Every step of the way. That's what she did. As she was getting off the train, as she was thinking about the future, only good thoughts.
Hana, I'd like to pause for a moment to welcome viewers who are watching from all around the country and all around the world. Good morning to those of you, or good afternoon, depending on the time zone, to those of you joining us from Colton, New York, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Far Grove, Michigan, Pompano Beach, Florida, and Willow, Arkansas. And welcome to our international viewers who are as far-flung as Canada, the Netherlands, and Malta. We are so glad that you are here. So at the end of this train car journey, when the doors opened at Auschwitz, Hana's parents and everyone else on the train would have been confronted by chaos, by people yelling and pushing, by guard dogs barking, and families were separated immediately, with men forced into one line and women and children forced into another. Lindsay, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. Could you please illuminate for us what happened upon arrival at Auschwitz to women who were visibly pregnant or to mothers who were accompanied by young children?
So, Auschwitz was both a killing center and a concentration camp. And what that meant was that when transports of Jews arrived there, they would have undergone a process that the Nazis called selection. This meant that someone decided very quickly who would be selected to be sent to the gas chambers immediately and killed, and who would be selected for forced labor. Visibly pregnant women or women who identified themselves as pregnant would have been sent to the gas chambers immediately. They were considered incapable of performing the forced labor. And they weren't the only ones. People who were elderly, sick, people with disabilities, young children, they would have also been selected for the gas chambers. Here you can see a photograph of women and children waiting to undergo this selection process. And even strong, healthy, otherwise fit mothers in their 20s and 30s were also often gassed upon arrival at Auschwitz. This is because they were with their young children, holding their infants, holding their toddlers, and it was in order to avoid the kind of chaos that you could imagine might take place if the SS attempted to separate mothers from their young children. So they often went with them together to the gas chambers. In other cases, we know of prisoners trying to give warnings to say things like, give the children to your mother, give the children to the elderly people, without explaining why, or cases where the SS did forcibly separate mothers from their young children. Here you can see a deceptively calm image of women with their children waiting to go to the gas chambers. This is part of the deception that was so key to the Auschwitz process. They don't know what is going to happen to them. And they are together, they're young children, they're elderly people. So the goal was really to keep people calm. People who were selected for labor at Auschwitz, on the other hand, tended to be between the ages of 14 and 40, or even a little bit older. They would have undergone a registration process where they had their heads shaved, where they went through a dehumanizing disinfection process, all their clothes would have been taken away. They would have been given camp uniforms, as you can see here in this photograph, and in many cases given a tattoo at Auschwitz as registered prisoners performing forced labor. So when Priska arrives at the camp, she's in a very vulnerable position. She is the right age to be selected for forced labor, but she's pregnant.
And yet, Hana, your mother was so early in her pregnancy, she wasn't yet showing. She wasn't visibly pregnant. And there was no way that she could have fully understood the special dangers of being a pregnant Jewish woman in this moment. And you've shared with me that, in fact, after she made it past the initial sorting process and was deemed suitable for exploitation as a laborer, there was more scrutiny. What can you tell us, Hana, about a calculation that your mother made when she overheard women who were in front of her in the line being questioned about whether or not they were pregnant?
This was actually the moment of selection when Mengele was walking by. And having said that, my mother thought that as a pregnant woman, because he asked those who are pregnant step out, that she will be well taken care of, or better taken care of as a pregnant woman. She almost stepped out, but there was next to her standing another woman also from Bratislava who grabbed her by the arm and said, "No, you stay here." So when Mengele stopped in front of her and asked her in German if she's pregnant, she said no, answer in German as well. He just smiled and kept on going. And that was the first step to hopefully surviving, because then she was selected to go and work for the
And Hana,
right.
the man you are describing, Mengele, who we see here, is Dr. Josef Mengele, a notorious Nazi doctor who was known for extraordinarily cruel and vicious medical experiments that he conducted on people imprisoned in the camps. And when you're describing your mother's response, about thinking, oh, if I acknowledge that I'm pregnant, perhaps I'll have a little more leniency or people will take care of me. That response makes sense in a sane world, imagining that a pregnant woman would somehow receive accommodations or be protected. And I have heard a number of survivors describe how at Auschwitz, everything that they knew about the world was just inverted. It was all the reverse of what a logical person would think. But nevertheless, human kindness did not completely disappear in your mother's case. And the woman that you mentioned from the train, Edith, kept her promise and tried to support your mother as best she could. What did Edith do to take care of and tend to your mother?
What Edith was able to do, and I don't know how she did it, neither did my mom. She found some food, be it a potato, be it a carrot, be it I don't know what, but she just told my mother, open mouth. My mother opened mouth, and in came some piece of food, piece of bread, potato. And what was also lucky, that when Edith did say to my mother to open mouth, and if there was a guard nearby who was not SS, he turned his back to them, so he couldn't witness it, if you will. That was another piece of luck. It's all about luck, the whole story, because that helped my mother both ways.
And she and Edith were actually assigned to the same bunk in the prisoner barracks, right?
That is correct. And Edith also kept giving my mother her part of the blanket. The dressing that my mother got handed to her in Auschwitz was actually a big coat dress, which was so lucky, because even if she would have eaten and showed or growing pregnancy, it would have been a little bit difficult to see. So as I am going through the experiences of my mom and how many were controlled by luck, it's a great word, but that's what helped her all across.
And the photograph that we saw was not of your mother, but of other women wearing similar kinds of garments, just to give a sense, because I know when I was pregnant, it was unmistakable. You could see it from a mile away. So the idea that there were these sort of loose, ill-fitting garments actually helped to shield her.
Yeah.
Did your mother ever see your father again while at Auschwitz? And if so, what was that encounter like?
A few days later, across the barbed wire, she talked to my father. The guard who was nearby, men and women were separated. So the guard turned also his back to my mother and father. And again, my father just told my mother, think only good thoughts. Be careful, think only good thoughts. And my mother took it to heart. And when I am thinking about it, I'm thinking, I wish he would have think only good thoughts.
And Hana, when you're describing these guards who turned their backs, they're doing it out of some sense of human decency. They're allowing a moment to happen. It's not that they're doing something actively kind, but they're not interfering.
It is correct.
This was all happening at the end of September 1944, if I'm following correctly. And in October, Priska, your mother, was actually transported out of Auschwitz. She and also Edith, her friend, were transferred to a labor camp in Germany known as Freiberg. How was your mother's pregnancy eventually discovered? Because, of course, she couldn't hide it forever. Time was not on her side in that way.
Toward the end of her pregnancy, she was moving a little bit slower, and she was trying to wash up there in the barrack and opened her coat. And one of the women saw the belly and started screaming, you're going to get us all killed. You're pregnant. How can you be pregnant in a camp? You're going to get us killed. And so the hullabaloo started, and the women guards came running into the barrack and asked my mother, "Is it true? Are you pregnant?" And my mother said, "Yes, I am pregnant." And they said, "What do you need?" And my mother said, "I spend about 12 hours a day doing work in a fabrica, in a factory. And my feet are so swollen and they hurt. I would like a foot bath." And they brought a bucket of warm water to her. And yes, 2 days later, I came.
And again, that bucket of water, a completely unexpected kindness, and we will never know what motivated that guard to do that rather than to turn her in or beat her or who knows what else, but they did that. And everyone around her was worried because they doubted that she could deliver a viable baby. Please describe to us what your mother told you about the scene and the place where you were born.
When she started to feel that I'm coming, she was taken downstairs to the basement of the factory and put on a piece of wood, which was was used for a desk or whatnot. And they asked, "Who is a doctor?" There were several people, many people around, guards and prisoners. And there was a pediatrician also named Edith, and she helped my mother. And my mother didn't go into detail. She just told me a couple of things which were kind of interesting as to the responses of the people standing there and looking at that quote unquote theater of my mother giving birth. When I showed myself, I had my fists on my head like this. And one of the women started screaming, "A devil was born, and devil was born." Well, that didn't make my mother feel very good. She was thinking, what happened to that baby? But that was all. In the meantime, what I wanted to mention is that after the discovery that my mother was pregnant, the women in the barrack made me a shirt and a cap from their own underclothes. So they basically stitched a shirt and stitched it.
And Hana,
For
we will
me.
take a look. We will take a look at that later. But you were born very weak, right? Very tiny. How much did you weigh?
I weighed 1.5 kilo, which is about 3 pounds.
And incredibly weak, but alive, And I cannot imagine how your mother must have felt, a woman giving birth for the first time with all these people around her staring at her on a board in a basement. But there you were. Lindsay, this is really an extraordinary story. A Jewish baby being born in a concentration camp. This is April 1945. It is the last weeks of the war. It's really nothing short of a miracle. But I don't actually believe in miracles, and I believe a lot in context. Could you help us understand some of the factors that made Hana's amazing survival possible, even if improbable?
Yeah, so Hana's survival is extraordinary. It's extremely rare, but it wasn't entirely unique. In fact, there were two other pregnant women who were in the same subcamp with Priska, who then later gave birth to babies who also survived. They didn't know each other were pregnant, or they were all trying to keep this desperate secret. But they all share something in common, these women. And that comes down to what we've talked about a little bit already. Luck, as Hana said. Timing, Edna, as you just mentioned as well, and help from others. People like Edith or the guard who shows a small act of kindness. These are all really key. Most important, probably, I'd say, is timing. That because these women came to Auschwitz late in 1944, newly pregnant, This meant that they gave birth in the spring of 1945 as the war was coming to an end. If they had given birth earlier, there's very little chance that their babies would have been able to survive in a concentration camp or been allowed to survive in a concentration camp. Hana, in particular, was born just weeks before the war ended. So that's really key, that they got to Auschwitz at a time when they weren't showing in their pregnancies, quite late in the war, and that they then gave birth just shortly before liberation.
Lindsay, I want us to be sure, though, as much as we are celebrating and marveling at this extraordinary story, that this is far from the norm. And there were many, many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of women whose infants were not allowed to survive or who were killed because they themselves were pregnant. Let's make this personal, though. Let's talk about, introduce us, please, to one woman at Auschwitz named Ruth Elias. What happened to her when officials learned there that she was pregnant?
So I'm really honored to get to share this really tragic and difficult story with everyone. Ruth, I think, as everyone will see, is a very remarkable woman. She, here you can see her as a young person. She arrived at Auschwitz in 1944, 8 or 9 months pregnant. And she's a young Jewish woman from Czechoslovakia. And through a series of rather unlikely events, she is registered as a prisoner in the camp rather than killed immediately upon arrival. But she quickly came to the attention of Dr. Joseph Mengele. This is the notorious SS doctor that Hana had introduced us to earlier. And Ruth is sure that this means that she is going to be killed. But instead, Mengele tells her that she's going to be allowed to give birth in the concentration camp in Auschwitz. And she doesn't really know why, but she's taken to the camp barracks infirmary. Eventually, she goes into labor, and she's so young and inexperienced that she doesn't even first realize that this is labor. She doesn't have any family there with her to help her understand what's happening or to comfort her. But she does then ultimately give birth to a healthy baby. But we'll now hear from Ruth herself about what Mengele had in store for her, and just a warning that this is quite difficult to watch.
And I gave birth this night to a beautiful girl, very big. There was no cotton wool, there was no boiling water. There was nothing. I laid in my own dirt. In the morning, Mengele came and told this woman, you have to put a bandage over her breast. She mustn't feed the baby. I want to see how long can a baby live without food. And my breasts were bound. And the baby was near me crying. It was hungry. Every day Mengele came to see and to make his research. How long can a baby live without food?
There are just no words for this kind of cruelty, and Ruth's surprise at being allowed to give birth quickly turned into a waking nightmare. For her to be unable, as she said, her breasts were bound, so she couldn't nurse the baby, and to just sit there and watch as her child starved. I mean, this is the absolute depths of depravity and criminality. What happened, Lindsay, to Ruth and to her newborn baby girl?
So as we heard from Ruth, conditions were absolutely horrible in the infirmary in Auschwitz, right? There's no medical care for her, for the baby. Because her breasts were bound, she developed an infection, likely mastitis from clogged milk ducts. She has no way to care for herself at all. But her primary concern is, I think, of course, for the baby, who she is watching grow weaker and weaker. She's trying to find any way that she can to comfort her, to care for her, to help feed her. She gives her some drops of soup on bread to try to give her any nourishment. But eventually the baby is so weak that she can't even cry. And one day, Dr. Mengele comes in and he says to Ruth, okay, tomorrow I'm coming back for both of you. Ruth is sure that this meant that he was going to kill them both. They were both going to be sent to the gas chambers. And that night, she became just absolutely hysterical, screaming, which brings her to the attention of one of the doctors in the camp who was also a prisoner as well. And let's listen again to hear Ruth describe how this doctor saved her life and ended her baby's suffering. And please be aware that this clip is perhaps even more difficult than the last.
Mengele is coming to fetch me. And she told, I must do something for you. She came back half an hour later with an injection needle. And she told me, give this to your child. I asked her, what is it? And she told me, morphine. I told her, look here, how can I give this to my child? How can I be the murderer of my child? She told me, I've made an oath of Hippocrates, and I must save lives. You're young, and I must save your life. Your child can't live. Look at the child, how it's looking. But you're young, and I must save you. And you will give this to your child because I can't. I gave the injection to my child.
Ruth's story is just gut-wrenching. And I think it is important that we listen to it. Because as we try to understand the history of the Holocaust, to memorialize victims and to honor survivors, it's really important that we remember that these were human beings, that we talk about the moments of humanity, which Hana's story has been giving us, but also that we really try to face the inhumanity and the cruelty that was at the Holocaust's core. Ruth shared this testimony. She wrote about this in her memoir. I think she wanted us to know, to talk about it, and to understand what survivors experienced. So Ruth's testimony really forces us to confront some really difficult realities.
And Lindsay, I think you put it right that we owe it to her. You and I are both mothers, as is Hana. I'm sure many people watching are, and if not, everyone who's watching is somebody's baby. It is very, very painful and stressful to listen, but we owe it to her not to look away, not to let this be done and have the world act like it didn't happen.
Ever since I became pregnant and had my daughter, I have just these stories like Ruth's, like Priska's, of childbirth, of pregnancy, of motherhood in the Holocaust they've consumed me. I think it's something about connecting with my anxieties, my vulnerabilities in my life, and then trying to understand what it was like to add in the Holocaust, to try to connect those moments. It's humbling, it's difficult, it's consuming.
Thank you for giving us this context, though, and I'd like to bring Hana back because I think, Hana, it makes very starkly clear what a miracle and how utterly unlikely your birth was. Because Ruth's story shows how warped Nazi ideology was, that even being a Jewish infant, a fresh life, was considered inherently dangerous just by virtue of what family they came from. So, Hana, I'd like to return to April 1945 and May 45. When we left your story, you were a newborn, but you were not out of danger. You were very tiny. You've told me when you were born, you were too weak to cry initially, and you were gravely sick when you and your mother and others were loaded on a train bound for the Mauthausen concentration camp. Tell us about the man that your mother met a few weeks later who may have saved your life.
This was in Mauthausen, after mother was able actually make it through the gate where she was threatened. They were going to take me away from her and kill me, probably throw me against the wall. And mother was able to fight and keep me. She was saved by the woman guard who walked by and wanted to play with me, and then gave me back to mother and showed mother where to go to a barrack. Few days later, this is now 29th of May, right? On 29th of April, on 5th of May, when they didn't have calendar, but it was few days, which, by the way, I have to say, my mother never ever told me about those days from 29th of April to the liberation, 5th of May. On 5th of May, which she didn't know it was what it was, she hears music. She hears music and English song or American song, Roll Out the Barrels. She came out of the barrack holding me. A couple of hours later, there was a young soldier with a helmet, with a red cross on the helmet, who was coming to the barracks. There were 3 barracks, and he wanted to see who was in there, how are they. And when my mother saw him, she came closer to him and said, I have something to show you. She said it in English. She spoke fluently. And she showed him me. And as she described it, she said, isn't she beautiful? Well, beautiful I was not. And he apparently just looked at her, looked at me, and nodded his head. But when he looked at me closer, he also noticed that I had skin infection on the whole body and asked my mother to wait, that he's going to bring physician to whom he was reporting as a nurse, and Dr. Stacy. And the physician came and told my mother, this baby is very sick, but we can help. We can help. Let us have her. And she handed me to them. And she really didn't know if she'll ever see me again.
And Hana, this young man who we just saw, was an American medic from the 11th Armored Division, Leroy, or known as Pete Peterson. And he was a medic, so he could see you were very, very seriously ill. So your mother took that leap of faith. She handed you over to him, and you were gone for a few days, right?
No, it was literally just overnight.
Okay. And what happened when you came back?
Next day, there was a woman nurse from the army, and she was bringing me back all wrapped up in bandages. But the nurse was crying. And so my mother, who was standing outside the barrack, asked her, is she dead? And the nurse said, no, she's sleeping. She's just tired. She was alive.
And so
yeah,
Pete Peterson, he saved your life.
He did.
You met him later, right? You had a relationship?
Yes, I did. Because I lived in Chicago afterwards, after I emigrated to the United States. And I got on the website of the 11th Armored Division. And I wrote to him. I sent him an email. We made a contact. And then in Mauthausen, we met. We were both invited to a celebration of liberation. And we met. And I asked him if I can call him Daddy Pete, because I didn't have a father, since my father, as we learned, was killed on a death march in January 45.
And you stayed close with Daddy Pete and his family for the rest of his life, right?
Very much so. We stayed close. And I really feel that they are my family, all of them. his boys and their families. The truth is, as I was growing up, I didn't have anybody. I had one uncle and one aunt, and I always wanted to have family around me. So I adopted, and they adopted me, and they are my family.
And Hana, as you said, your father did not survive the war. Afterwards, your mother went looking for him, and he had died. We have here a beautiful photograph from not so long after the war of you and your mother there in a stroller. What did you learn about how your father died?
We learned that from a prisoner who was with my father, that my father didn't believe that mother will survive. And he was working in a subcamp with other prisoners, subcamp of Auschwitz in Gleiwitz or Gliwice, which actually is the place where the war started. And when in January, after the liberation of Auschwitz, the Gleiwitz was evacuated and the prisoners were taken on a death march. That's what it was called. He couldn't walk anymore because he basically stopped eating, not believing that my mother will survive. So he was killed. And his fellow prisoners couldn't tell us whether he just dropped dead from being tired and weak, or he was actually shot because he was weak and tired. But every time I think about that moment, whenever it happened in January 45, I just hope that later on there were some flowers above the place where he took his last breath.
And Hana, I know this is extremely painful to talk about, and we are skipping over many, many very important parts of your family story. So thank you for bearing with us. We have a couple of viewers, Catherine and Laura, among others, who want to know, Hana, in the few minutes we have left, when did you start to understand the trauma, the unimaginable trauma that your mother went through? Did she talk about her experience, or was it something she tried not to relive by putting it in the past?
There were a couple of instances when my when my schoolmates, when I was in the 4th or 5th grade, they kept asking, "Why do you have a name Edith? You are Hana." And I went home and I said, "Why do I have a name Edith?" And mother said, "I will tell you all about it. Just go do your lessons. I'll tell you later." And when I was 12, my mother decided that I am now grown, as it's a custom in Jewish families, the 12-year-old girl can go to the Torah. And she said, "Now you are big enough to understand." And that's when she told me the whole story. She was very careful, not making it too shocking, but it was shocking enough. And that's when I learned what happened to my family and how I came to be. And yes, it was shocking. However, I, from then on, started to protect my mother, literally, from my outbursts of teenagehood and from my being stubborn. She said, "You are stubborn like your father," to which I said, "Thank you. That's good. I have something from him." But having said that, I started to understand what she must have gone through, and still am learning.
And you're wearing her scarf today. You told me that beautiful floral scarf is your mother Priska's.
Whenever I talk about her, this was her favorite scarf.
She's with you. Lindsay, a final question for you. A viewer named Kaylin asks, what happened to Ruth Elias? Did she find peace later, and did she have a family?
Yeah, thanks for asking. She did She was the only member of her immediate family who survived. After the war, she really grappled with the trauma that she had suffered with losing her daughter. But she did remarry another Holocaust survivor, and they had 2 children and a number of grandchildren as well. And she went on to speak in schools, write a memoir, educate people about the Holocaust. So the trauma stayed with her, I think, as it did for most Holocaust survivors, but she also did build a new life.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I know that Hana's survival represents that kind of resilience, that kind of hope, despite all of this pain and loss and cruelty. We see here little Hana with her baby doll, and I recognize so many people: Edith, the kind woman at Auschwitz, the optimism of Hana's parents to bring a life into the world, and the American medic, Pete Peterson. So Hana, you've been inspiring people even since before you were born. And there is one more final story I hope you will share that you alluded to earlier. Tell us the story behind 2 extraordinary objects, 2 artifacts that you donated to our museum here in Washington.
As I mentioned during my talk, after the women learned that my mother is pregnant, the women in the barrack, they tore their underclothes and made me a shirt and stitched on the collar a pink and blue flower. And this is the cap from their clothes, which could, it's not visible now, but there was a stamp of the KZ Freiberg. So this little shirt had made a provision for him. When there is a boy or a girl, just like the people were taking bets that if it's a girl, the war will be over. If it's a boy, war will continue. And there is the stamp of the KZ, of the concentration camp, slave labor camp.
And that stamp, KZ, is the KZ, means concentration camp in German. You were able to bring your son and your grandchildren to our conservation lab to visit this baby bonnet and clothing. Here they are with you.
Yeah.
What did your granddaughter
joy.
say?
She said, "Savta, you were so small."
And you were so small and vulnerable.
And
Hana,
I'm
we are
wearing scarf. Pardon, I'm wearing the same scarf there too.
bringing your mother with you. So Hana, thank you for donating those objects. We are honored to be the caretakers of the bonnet and the shirt and everything that they represent. And,
Thank you.
Please come and visit them with your family anytime.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are only able to touch on this small part. We are out of time for today. There is so much more to learn. I do want to give a special acknowledgement that watching with us live today from the United Kingdom is Wendy Holden, an author who devoted a very long time to documenting Priska's experience, and we will share information about Wendy's book in the comments. So as Americans prepare to celebrate Mother's Day this weekend, we pay tribute to your mother, Hana, to Priska, and to the many people who played a role in your survival. And Lindsay, as you shared, this is a topic that has been an interest of yours for some time. Thank you for enabling us to delve into it and to share it with your audience, and most of all, to enable us to understand the risks for mothers during the Holocaust. So Lindsay, thank you, and Hana especially, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And I also want to thank you, viewers, for joining us today. I know this was not an easy show to watch, but it shouldn't be. This is very difficult history. It is very emotional. It is very intimate. And we hope that we've given you a more complex and nuanced understanding of how risky and vulnerable it was to be a mother, a Jewish mother, during this time. Happy Mother's Day to all who are celebrating, and be safe and well wherever you are. Bye-bye.